So Mark Geary, first off, tell us a little bit about you.
So I've been a working musician all my life. Ran away, went to New York, which was my kind of kindergarten to learn how to do all this stuff. And I got signed, and I'm still with the same label. I plot a course on a map for a month, and I go there and sing my guts out and come back and live in a forest outside of Dublin in Kildare.
Wow.
And dream it up again and jump on another plane and go to another place. And that's really what I've been doing.
How did you get into music when you first started a couple of years ago?
The truth is, the biography will say, and Mark bought a one-way ticket, got a green card in a lottery, like it was all fated. And my brother had the Sinead Cafe, Jeff Buckley and Sinead O'Connor and U2 were showing up or whatever. But the truth is, it's all well and good that I was there as all of that was happening. But I sold my guitars to get to New York. I went on a one-way ticket, and a lot of the great stuff happened in desperation. I listened to the radio and was playing along and just had this absolute kind of love for music and whatever. But, the idea that you could be a part of that club wasn't something. I certainly didn't grow up around kind of music or trad music or community of people. I just remember getting a lot of buses and going seeking kind of knowledge. And I don't know where that motivation came, but I had a draw, 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. I wanted it. I worked on my songs. I worked trying to get gigs and the hustle. So that's how it happened. And honestly, Lauren, that's still going on. I mean, more than ever, as the Live Nations of the world just kind of cherry pick the absolute pop star or whatever. Underneath all of that, there are kind of grafting, hustling musicians out there in the world. I'm just one of them.
And tell us a little bit more about that music journey of you heading to New York and the Sinead Cafe. Yeah. What is the Sinead Cafe, I suppose?
It shouldn't have been anything more than a cafe that had really lousy coffee and wonky chairs. It should not have been anything more than that. It was down in the East Village on St. Mark's Place in the early 90s, and the East Village at that time, honestly, was a bit of a war zone and a bit of a dangerous place, or certainly edgy. Certainly you had to have your wits about you or whatever. And Shane Doyle and my brother Carl just opened up this little cafe, and I guess their hook was, we know a ton of Irish musicians and we know poets and we know these kind of people. So it became this kind of unofficial Irish embassy down in the village. No Irish people were living in the village. It was that traditional thing that you went to the Bronx or you went to Queens and these Irish kind of enclaves of places, and suddenly there was this kind of new batch of just people who were showing up that were like, no, I don't want Paddy Wackery. I don't want any of that. I want downtown. I want Martin Scorsese, Taxi Driver. They were all a bit crazy. I guess they were all a bit vanguard. So that's what Sinead was. And then, you played some nights to the waitress, the wall and the weirdo. Like the one guy who just kind of, he didn't even stagger in. He just kind of fell in. And that's your audience. Years later, I remember reading about the West Village when Dylan and all these folkies were playing. I mean, it was really kind of circus performers. Like, can you get a crowd? Can you hold a crowd? Like, no one's buying a ticket. They're passing the hat. You're playing for tips. But my God, what a place to go learn. And what was beautiful and really, really important, if you died a slow death, which I did, you could go back and you could find another place and die a slow death there. And eventually you kind of had this kind of muscle memory of, okay, so maybe I've written songs, maybe I write better songs. What I really started to do was to not play a game and actually go, well, I'm Mark and I'm from Dublin and I'm living here and I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. The whole place scares the hell out of me. And that seemed to resonate. What started to happen then was that as the songs got better, as I did my 100, 200 gigs, I started to be asked to do kind of support slots, big support slots for the bigger bands that were rolling through New York. You plug in, there's a room full of people that have absolutely no interest in anything you have to say because their band are going to come on in 45 minutes. I would just chat. I would just kind of reveal myself, right? And again, I don't know where that comes from. Maybe the clown that I was in school or whatever I was leaning on just kind of got me through, and I'd win the room, and then I'd go bartend.
Yeah.
Like I'd play for really big bands, unplug, and then just run to my job. You know, it sounds like, oh, Mark, you're so humble, when I really wanted to get all the prizes and all the flowers, and you're amazing, oh my God. But I didn't, because I couldn't, you know, so I just run to the job. But it started to become a thing, so I got big gigs, and I guess people started to pay attention or whatever. I just put my head down and just kept working and living my life. I just got better, just because I started at a really low level, so I had to get better.
Your track Headlights is one of the reasons we're chatting right now. Tell us a little bit about the track.
Headlights is one of the reasons, is it? Do you like that one?
I do. I love it, actually, yes. I love the whole album, but Headlights is probably the favourite.
Lauren, it's just when I go to the I promise, it's the chorus.
Yeah.
Every time. And when I get to that chorus, just sometimes a song just works. It works and it works and works. I absolutely adore that song. I adore it. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were saying, like, so Antebellum EP, Before the War, is the translation. And he said, I thought I was gonna hear some heavy stuff, and I didn't hear any of that. And I was like, yeah, it's a love song. The whole thing is like, the world is on fire. The Straits of Hormuz, and they're talking that by the summer we'll have travel restrictions that we'll need, like back to COVID. As I was writing, I threw out my telly, because I found myself just one too many crime, serial killer, you know, Netflix show, and I was like, oh my God, dude, you gotta get out of this funk. And it was in January, which is always a tough time for musicians, because you don't generally tour, so you don't make money. And I was just staring at the abyss, and I got rid of the telly. I set up my little writing desk, and I was like, okay, I have all these scraps of paper. If I asked the label to fund it and put the gun to my head, maybe I could knock out a couple of songs. That's how it started. And then these songs, like, I've never written songs with such an innocence. So I was either going to lean into, you know, Gaza and Trump and the madness and the grift and the cruelty of everything, or I was going to lean into, I'll figure a way out. I lean to love, I lean to joy and the simple stuff, and that's kind of what I did. And Headlights kind of wrote itself. I mean, it's just this idea of just, you're in a car with someone and you listen to the radio, and maybe they'll play some Rolling Stones, and I just love the, you know, not to, I think musicians sometimes, or songwriters, they can hide behind a veil and maybe not really say it as they're really thinking, because they're nervous or they're insecure or whatever. I just wrote it all down. And then that chorus, it's so joyous. It's so, like, as a guy who plays a lot of solo shows, it's the most anthem I think I've ever done. Just unbridled kind of, I refuse to kind of subscribe into the world of fear. It's very easy. I understand why people can do it, because the world's on fire. So I didn't. I went the other way.
Talking about music, you don't just release music as you've written scores for multiple films. Tell us how that came about.
It's just the label, and again, as we were talking about, like, the hustle and the just the grafting for the next project or whatever. My label, the guy, there's a guy called Gil Holland. There was a beautiful book about this idea, Tipping Point is the book, and it talks about this idea of, there has to be 4 or 5 different kind of moments to make something into the public kind of consciousness or whatever, you know, the zeitgeist, this moment when everyone is talking about that thing. And this guy breaks it down, and Gil is one of those components. He's a connector. He'd go like, well, Mark, you shouldn't sit there and talk to that guy, that musician. You should talk to this dude who's a painter. And it kind of opened my mind to kind of other things. So he is a independent kind of movie producer, which really means he finds people with money. You know, he just puts people in the same room having a conversation. So a lot of these independent films, by the time it gets to everything being kind of shot and all the money has been spent, they don't have a soundtrack. And Gil was like, well, I have a guy. No, he didn't have a guy. He was basically basically telling a guy that this is what you're going to do. He said, I have a guy who could do that, writes beautiful songs, and he could sit there and he could just, play piano and just kind of make movie scores. And I loved it because there's some moments, Lauren, in movies or cue sheets, they're asking you to kind of have incidental music for a part, but it could be 9 seconds. I write songs.
Yeah.
They're asking me, well, what do I do? Or I started to pay attention to the great kind of film scores and go like, oh, okay, it's really kind of an interesting choice, or maybe some kind of spacey, or maybe it's harmonies or something if it requires moody, spooky, sometimes it's documentary, a lot of documentary films that I seem to do. So if it's shot in America, maybe Americana, maybe banjo or whatever. So you just sit and just try and have lots and lots and lots of ideas and what works and what doesn't. It's an amazing thing. And then what happens, and I didn't know that this was going to happen, you've done all of this work. You've really, you're staying up for hours and hours and hours doing your work. And then you go off and pick up your guitar as Mark again, and all these songs are ready to go. You've done all of the heavy lifting. And so that happens quite a lot, where I work on a little thing and then I come back to me and these things are percolating away. It's kind of interesting, kind of a surprise and byproduct of the work.
What does the rest of 2026 look like for you?
Gigs and gigs and gigs, because they say, not to be cynical, but they say new is the most used word in advertising. So I have a new album. So then that gives momentum. It propels you into, people are interested in talking about, new. Yeah, just touring. I was in California. I'll go back to New York and do the East Coast. I'll do Switzerland and Australia, and I'll do some little spots in Germany and Norway, and I won't stop working. Yeah, I'm out on the road and meeting the people.
Amazing. I'd love to have a job like that.
But here's the thing. 4:00 in the morning, 2 days ago, I was dragged out of my bed in Ireland. The flight was 6:45 because... Right? Yeah, right? So do you hear that noise? So it's 2 hours before, because I'm checking in guitars and whatever, and Dublin airport is chaotic. Everyone's, running on holidays, or it's just busy. So there's anxiety. So you get there 2 hours before, and then I land poured into a van in a jocker, like absolutely wrecked. And then someone goes, so tonight you go on before the Elephant. It's incredible and it makes me laugh, but it's mad. Most bands, just if they're lucky or they're at the kind of level or whatever, they're rolling up on the tour bus or whatever into the back of the venue and sold out, 2,000 people. It's Hello Amsterdam. But I don't know if they ever get to experience what I see. My point is, I think I've accepted that this is going to be my graft, and I think it just keeps it all really interesting, because you meet and are forced into meeting humanity at a kind of one-on-one kind of level. Jumping on a bus down to Naples or wherever I'm going, and it's magic.
And I suppose finally, where can people find you on social media if they're looking to stay up to date with all of your shenanigans all over the world?
I find Instagram the least awful of the socials. I post and I'm really into gardening, and I live in a little forest. So it's Mark Geary Music on Instagram. There is a Facebook. If they want to listen to the music, or the Bandcamp and Spotify and all the rest.